excited to introduce you to my guest today, the amazing, the illustrious, the wonderful Agi Sardi, coming to us from Boston, Massachusetts. Hi, welcome.
Hi. Oh, thank you so much for choosing me to interview. It's such an honor.
Thank you for being here. It's truly an honor to talk to you. So you are such an accomplished person. Just to name a few, you have 2 master's degrees. Your title is Technology Innovator. You are also, I love this, a mentor and judge at Technovations, where you provide business and MIT app inventor instruction to inspire and educate girls and women to solve real world problems through technology. Wow, can we clone you, please? You are a teacher, you're a workshop leader, you've worked with students doing robotics for model sailboats, which I'd love to sign up for, by the way. You've been an IT development coordinator at Northeastern University, an advanced technology manager at Raytheon, and you also ran your own Afro-Brazilian dance troupe where you did capoeira and samba. I mean, the list goes on, but we want to hear from you. So my first question is, you've had such success in the IT and STEM fields, and then you have brilliantly passed your knowledge on to educate young people as well. Can you just take us on your journey of how you got to where you are today?
Yeah. That's really so interesting to think about, I think, for all of us. Like, how did we get to where we are at this moment in our journey, right? Yeah. And of course, I owe it to my parents and my upbringing and my, where I come from. I'm Eastern European. I don't know if you know that. I was born in Hungary. We're refugees. We escaped. Both my parents are, my dad's was a PhD. My mom's was one of the top engineers in lamp engineering. She developed tungsten lighting. And my dad was a nuclear chemist, and he developed radioimmunoassay, which is a technique for blood analysis used today. So I had a huge pedestal. And then I have 2 sisters and who are older. So I also benefited from all their mistakes. I got to watch all that. But my parents always had, in Europe, people get a very well-rounded education. So I always did paint and dance. I was a top-level national gymnast in high school, did tap, ballet, jazz, acrobatics. And I think that kept me out of trouble, And all my high school friends, they got into a lot of trouble. I was too busy every day. I had to go to tap or ballet, and then I had to come home and do all that AP class work after school. Kept me really out of trouble, I think. That might have been, and I loved it, especially as you get older and you understand more, like as you go up in the grades in every one of these, by senior year and junior and senior year in high school, it was like really thrilling, the topics you're learning. So, and I had a really great group of friends in high school. So my parents set that bar high, and they said, okay, because we all wanted to be artists and dancers. I myself wanted to be a gymnast, like Simone Biles, of course. Not at that time. At that time, it was Olga Korbut and Nadia Comaneci, of course.
Yes.
But my mother was always like, okay. And my mother had also been a gymnast even after the Holocaust. She both of them are Holocaust survivors. Yes.
Oh,
and,
wow.
Very few, right? 10% of my family survived the Holocaust, and that's more than many people's families in Europe, right? Mine. So my parents said, okay, you can paint, you can draw, that's your hobby, pick a field. And of course, my parents were in the sciences, right? In the natural sciences, in chemistry, physics, engineering. And my sister became a clinical chemist. My other sister was a pharmacist. And so I was a rebel, and I went into computer science. I was the rebel of the family. And I do have a degree in biochemistry, just to appease my parents.
Sure.
I did get a double major undergrad in biochem and computer science. And that's how I got involved. And to be honest, you can credit me with a lot of that ability, but there was a big push in that time for women to be in the tech fields, a very big push, you know, this country, and certainly in Europe and in the communist countries where my family escaped from, women really had top positions in technology.
Oh, I
So
didn't
that
know
was very
that.
normal. My mom was the top engineer in the country. She traveled all over the communist world, Soviet Union, Egypt, India, training and teaching tungsten lamp engineering technology to people. So it was very common. When we came to America, we were very shocked at how women were incredibly oppressed. Like when my sister said she wanted to be a doctor, they would say, "Oh, you mean a nurse, dear?" Or that women couldn't wear pants. Like at the time, you know, women didn't wear pants. They wore skirts with these stockings underneath, like in the freezing cold. So, I mean, I have to give credit to that, right? That my world and my vision always had included powerful women and smart women and women in the technical fields, in the sciences. That was very natural to me. And it was unnatural that they wouldn't be there. But in the 80s, the United States also promoted that concept. And so that was being pushed a lot. And so I think there was 50% of my class were women in computer science, you know,
No
certainly.
kidding.
Yeah, yeah. And it was only after that time that ratio started to go down. And I was always curious why. And that's why Technovations, you talked about Technovations, that's why Technovations is so important, because they discovered when they studied it, the phenomenon, why women weren't going into these strictly technology, computer and engineering type of fields, was because the toys that were available to them, the games and the things they accessed as children weren't technologically oriented. And whereas boys did. And so when they got to college, boys had it. And at my age, that wasn't true because there wasn't so much of that around. But as you can imagine, 20-year-olds, you know, in the 80s had access in the 70s and early 80s to more and more technology toys as little kids. And so they got to be so adept. And at college, you know, the professors teach to the highest level. They don't teach to the lower level. That's their job. It's not their fault. And the universities were didn't recognize that.
That is fascinating. First of all, I'd love to have been at your family dinner table. That must have been really amazing. Talking about nuclear, you know, and tungsten. But that is fascinating about how, even with me growing up, I remember, you know, girls had dolls and boys had Legos and Tinker Toys, and they were really specifically marketed to the separate genders. And I'm very thankful that's changed now. But it does sort of make sense that when you're forming your brain and what you're learning, that if you don't have access to the technology, you know, I remember my son had this like snap circuits game where he had to figure out how to make these circuits connect. And it was so cool. If that is completely, you know, foreign to you, how would you even know you'd be interested in doing something like that? Because you didn't even have a chance. Fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. And also you left out Ataris. Do you remember those Pong games?
Yes, of course. Right? Yes.
And the early, you know, little computer, every boy had one of those. I had one of those, of course. Of course I did, because of my dad. My dad got it. My mother said, "Ugh, you know, what do you need that for?" But we played Pong oh my God. And
yes.
What also existed back then were the TI programmable little computers.
Right. Wow. And I also really appreciate the fact that you saw women in powerful positions. So that, again, that wasn't new to you. It was like, this is just the way the world is. And then coming here and seeing what that is. And I love that that was kind of ingrained in you as a child, because it was just very natural. So that brings me to the next question is, when you were working, were you often the only woman in the room once you started your career? Or were there lots of women with you? Like, were there challenges to overcome by being a woman in the technology field?
Yeah, I mean, all right. I'll share this with you. Okay, when I was, you know, I'm kind of curvy, if you remember. I'm a little curvy. And when I was graduating,
I believe the word is stunning. I believe that's the word we're looking for here. Go on.
Thank you. But anyway, when I was graduating college, I really wanted to go into biomedical engineering and prosthetic limbs. And I wanted to make the first organic computer. That was my big dream. But I settled. They gave me such a big salary, quote unquote, big compared to today. I mean, it's whatever, but
Yeah.
they gave me such a, the offers out there on the table when I was graduating college were very enticing. And my first job, I remember the guy was a lech, the guy who was at our school interviewing us. He was actually dating one of the girls who I was graduating with. Yeah. Yeah. It was creepy.
Yeah.
At that time, not creepy. Nope. At that
Right.
time, pretty normal.
Oh, right.
But to me, it was really creepy. And I remember telling my biomedical engineering professor, I was like, oh my God, they just want me because I have TNA. And he's like, Aggie, you got to use your assets. All your assets. And when you're like, you're their boss, too bad, like you'll be their boss someday. Who cares how you got there?
Oh my gosh, that's what a riot.
And
Wow.
my first job was fabulous. It was in Newport. I remember the interview. I was out there and this beautiful, first beach in the background on Bellevue Ave. Such a gorgeous, lovely, natural place. And I love nature, and it's really critical to our psyches. And I love Newport. And so I immediately, knew that was a job for me. And it was at a kind of cool company, a little startup company. And it did consulting to Naval Underwater Systems Center. And I used to have to go on base. But again, women, couldn't go on base alone. You always had to have a chaperone. And you could only have midnight to 8 time. So, I mean, I would go into this place, I'd have to have a male chaperone. So some other poor schmuck had to be up at midnight to 8 with me. And then we'd walk in and, there's some naked pictures of women everywhere, right? And this whole, like the guy had to get you in, even if he was just like, whatever, ticket taker, whatever, it doesn't matter. He's the one who got you in. You have no status, like you weren't important. So, but there were, like I said, there were many more graduates back then in especially computer science than happened later on. It decreased, it went down a lot. So it is true. Yeah, I had a lot. One time, I mean, I worked in the Air Force Base and they were having a pig roast. And I remember the general, like, I don't eat pig and I don't certainly want to roast them. I think I was vegetarian for 16 years of my life. And this guy, one of the generals comes in, puts his foot across my little cubicle and like, oh, you gonna come to the pig roast? Like, I'm like, ah. So there were a lot of those situations. Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm glad you made it through, it didn't discourage you.
I think what you have to, like, again, I'm going to hit back to my mom, my dad, of course. I just, sadly, for the world, I could never, it's always like, these people survived the Holocaust. My mother was taken from her home. Her home was taken away from her. She was in forced enslavement camps throughout the Ukraine and then put on the train to Auschwitz, like how much worse? I mean, I have nothing to complain about.
Yeah, and that when you grow up with that perspective, it's obviously horrible. I mean, it doesn't get more horrible than that. But the beauty of their survival is that then you have this perspective of what someone else might think is such a huge problem and such a huge, you're kind of like, it's good, it's fine. And I think there's really a beauty to that. And it's a lovely lesson I think we all can learn when we do get caught up in our own heads and everything starts spinning out of control. It's like, let's take a breath. Let's check the reality of the situation. Is it really as bad and stressful as we think it is?
Right.
Wow.
Perspective. Even today, right? Even today, when you think of the situations that might not be occurring in your immediate family, but you think about how incredibly fortunate you are. Believe me, my son hates me talking about
Well, I think you can, especially kind of what we just went through, you can have this underlying gratitude while things are still hard. like things can be hard, legitimately hard, but then you can have that, but thankful they're not worse, and thankful to look at the good things. And that's, I think people will sometimes unfortunately spiral down when they don't have that kind of that little bit of light to say, but let's just look over here. How bad is it really? And that's, I've known a lot of people who have been able to knock it out of their own heads, and to have that sort of always with you is it's a beautiful legacy to what was lost.
One more thing you asked me, I want to run in the other room and grab this book, but I'm not going to. But it's the other thing about this process, I think you write about this as well, is that you got to learn your lessons through life. Like life is about, you're not going to know everything. My son and a lot of kids, want to do everything perfect this first time. We all did, right? We did not want to make mistakes. But it's about learning the lessons along the way, not falling in the same holes. There was this beautiful book about,
you can get it, like I can splice. I'll splice.
Okay, I'm gonna get it. One day my soul just opened up.
Oh, wow.
By Iyanla Vanzant. And you go through your incredible heartbreaks, you go through your job issues, you go through this, but reading that book, she talks about how you're walking down the street, you fall in a hole, you sprain your ankle or you hurt yourself. The next day you're walking down the street, you don't see it, you fall in it again. The third time you're around, like you better like avoid it, Yeah. And so life is kind of like that. Like after a while, it's great getting older for that reason. You realize you're not going to know everything. You got to give yourself a break, but don't fall down that hole 3 times.
I love that. And what I also love about that is that we're doing it to ourselves. No one's pushing us in that hole 3 times, right? We are doing it to ourselves. And again, if we take a second to stop and look, oh, there's the hole, then we can prevent ourselves from making that same mistake. But we have to fall in to learn that.
Sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's not, right? There's so much gaslighting and so on that you really are not necessarily doing that to yourself. But once you can recognize gaslighting, then like, okay, and that exists.
No, it's true. And that is a hard one. It's something I've had to face and deal with, and a lot of people, especially as women, where we do have to say, how does that sit with me? How does that sit with my gut and my instinct? That doesn't seem right. That's a very good point, which brings me to, how were you able to stand up for yourself when you were maybe the only woman in the room, or you were trying to have this career in IT? Did people try to discourage you along the way? Maybe not.
I was, again, fortunate in that at the time, there was a lot of push for women in the field that was really being promoted. And I had some horrible experiences with some male bosses, right? They were brilliant, right? Some of my bosses were brilliant. And one time this guy came in, I was the head of this laboratory that was doing advanced technology research and innovation. And we had people going up to Rome Air Force Base to do some integration on the stealth bomber. It's so exciting.
Wow.
And so one of I had 60 people who worked for me, and one of them was up there, and he had a brain tumor. I think he had a brain tumor, and he was not feeling well, whatever, and there was nothing to do. And he asked me if he could come home early instead of staying up there till 8 p.m. He wanted to leave at 5 or something. And I said, I felt sorry for him. And I said, sure. And everyone was available by phone. We had a lot of, dedicated lines. There was no Zoom back then. I couldn't Zoom in, but I could share their screen and, but anyway, they told my boss, and my boss came in, and in front of everyone, in the lab, like all these people who worked for me, and I was supposed to be the manager, the leader, the head of that. And he started screaming at me and telling me what a stupid person I was and whatever, on and on and on. And I just remember like that whole metaphor of the floor opening up and you could just fall. I kept hoping, I'm like, I hope the floor opens up now. When's the floor going to open up so I could fall through it and get out of here? And that was really horrible. And there are many situations where that's horrible. And again, it's going to be that same thing with, you know, he was old, he retired. I got a different boss who didn't, you know, they were competitors. So it's the other thing is having a support mechanism. You kind of have to really look and build a support mechanism for yourself. Once this guy did this, like, I thought he was amazing. He was brilliant. Like a code, you know, he would, you know, people would like pages and pages of code. This guy would write 3 lines.
Wow. Yeah.
And it would, you know, but no one could decode it. No one could work with it in the future. No one could maintain it. No one could update it. So in the end, his stuff sucked because it wasn't maintainable, even though it was just so efficient. And so we ended up getting more memory so that you could put thousands of lines of code. You didn't need the 3 lines of code anymore. He was obsolete and I wasn't.
Yes. Yes.
And so later on, I got to reward myself in those future situations, saying like, remember that time, you know, you got through it and you succeeded. And here are some people, you know, having a support mechanism is really critical, where you can go and say, this is where I could blossom and prosper.
That's such great advice. And especially because I feel like so often the situation wasn't going to change right then. He was not going to, the floor wasn't going to open up, number one, unfortunately. He was still going to be your boss. So that you had to find the strength within you to say, I'm not going to let this, you know, destroy me, and then go to your support to help you, you know, build yourself either even stronger, maybe like for the next time.
Yeah, I think you hit that one on the head. The thing I would say is you can't, this is so hard, but you can't take it personally. That's something that's so hard to learn. Like, this person's issue was whatever it was, but you have to take it personally. You're being attacked, you know, you got that horrible feeling in your chest, like you can't swallow, you can't breathe, whatever. And it happens to this day. Like, many times I have these meetings and afterwards I can't stop thinking of them. I can't sleep. I can't, like, this person said something, blah, blah, blah. And it's because you're taking it personally, and you've got to say, it's not about, I have to tell myself, it's not about me. It's about that person. It's about something in their life. It's not about me. And you can't really be taking things personally. You have to, you have to sort of be above that and realize it's not all about you.
Yeah. That is brilliant.
But the other thing is, sunlight is a disinfectant. So once some bad things happen in the workplace and so on, and I reported it to the ombudsman, who laughed and said, oh, come on, you know, what's wrong with reading Penthouse, you know, during lunch in the office next to you, sitting next to you? I mean, what's the problem? What's your problem with that? Or whatever, the other hard knock kind of things like that in an open environment. Like, so, but whatever the issue is, you have to report it, and you know, sunlight is a disinfectant.
Wow. I'm just taking a moment to take that in, because that's what Me Too and Time's Up, that's what it's all about. It's shining a light on what's been there. And then once it's out in the open, it can be dealt with and hopefully changed.
Right.
Wow.
There's so many stories of these brave women. I think I heard it on This American Life or one of the NPR podcasts themselves, but about women in the air traffic control or in the airport, you know, when I mean, the incredible harassments they face. And then they report it and they face more harassments, or there's like these people who own buildings in New York and how they take advantage of women. And you know, eventually, like you said, with the Me Too and with other movements, you know, once it's out there, it can be dealt with. If it's not out there.
Yeah. And that takes so much courage. So having the courage, again, it's really thinking to yourself, you know, I know this isn't right, and I believe in myself enough to shine light on it. And I also believe in myself enough to know, like you said, this is not personal. And I'm talking about like Me Too. You know, this is not personal. This is all about that person. And again, that is so hard, because we're sensitive beings. And if someone says something unkind, we take it in, but we have to have that resilience to say, no, that's on them. And that does come with age, I think. I hope.
Well, hopefully it comes with age, right? Hopefully it comes with experience, but
Right.
I'm sure it doesn't come to everyone.
Yeah, it's true. And that's, again, being conscious, back to the falling down the hole of taking it personally, of just sucking it up. So it's that always getting in tune with ourselves and our own strength to deal with what comes. You're such a good example of that.
Wow. Well, thank you. So are you.
Thank
So are you.
you. Well, can we talk about Zach a bit, please? Is that him? So you are a mom to an extraordinary young man, headed to Harvard in the fall, plays soccer with the US national team and with the New England Revolution at this young age. So you can take a lot of credit for that, Mama, if I may say. So how did you manage to have such a great work-life balance and also raise such an amazing, accomplished young man? That couldn't have been easy, I imagine.
Wow. You know what a learning curve that is and was, right? I mean, believe me, that was a lot of falling in the holes in the
Right.
I don't know if you know, I'm a single mom.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think that might have made it easier, to be honest.
Ah.
But also, like, you know, you get what you get. And I got a great kid. I mean, right? I mean, some people, there are issues. I was very lucky. I just had a really amazing child. And while many of us have that, some people aren't so lucky, but my kid was amazing. And I really trusted his judgment and his choices. And yeah, so I allowed, yeah, that was one of the things that I think changed, was different from the way I raised him and the way other people change him. For instance, in technology, right? I'm a strong believer in technology, and I'm on my computer like 24/7. I'd wear it as a chip in an instant inside my brain. So there's no question about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, but so he had access to technology, and my friends were Luddites. Some of my friends were Luddites, you know, they would be like, oh, I remember in middle school, like, oh, you can't have a phone. And that was back, you know, a while ago, right? That was 10 years ago, maybe, or 9, 8, 7, whatever years ago. So it wasn't so prevalent as it is today.
Right.
And
right.
so, oh my goodness, these kids have these cell phones. It's going to ruin their lives. They're not going to be able to communicate. They're going to be socially misfit. They're blah, blah. I mean, all these things. And I'm like, I let my kid play with, you know, have technology, including an iPad and his iPhone. And it was great for me because, especially as a single mom, one of the issues was I always wanted to know where he was.
Oh,
You
yes.
know, I didn't want to have to freak out and wonder, like, where are you? Or he, like, I'm just going to say, notorious. Boys never know where they are, and they don't ask directions. They're not going to ask anyone. So I didn't have to find out, like, where are you? And he'd say, oh, I'm here, or I'm out, you know where the White House is. Like, what the heck? So I always knew where he was. That gave me a lot of comfort.
Yeah.
When I need, you know, it gave me a lot of security. I didn't have to wonder. And in terms of the soccer, you asked, you mentioned that his proclivity towards that. I found, again, I was married to a Brazilian, and I'm Hungarian. And so, I mean, what else is it going to be? It's going to be soccer, football. What else is it going to be? The best football players in the world in these countries. You know,
Right.
we were passionate about football, and my kid could, like, stand or kick a football before he could walk.
Wow.
Like, all around this kitchen right here with his little tiny little football. And his uncle from Brazil came to live with us.
Wow.
And he spent a lot of time with Zach when I was working in a way. And he, you know, he loved kids. He was great with kids. And he was escaping from the corrupt Brazilian. He was in the police, and he had this horrendous corruption issue about going on there. And so he was so happy to be here. He took care of Zach. And of course, so Zach became this incredible soccer star. And he, along with the dinosaurs and the cars, you know, he could name every flag, you know, in the world from the soccer teams.
That's very cool.
Yeah. And so his passion for playing started very young, and he
Mm.
got better. He was good at it.
Mhm.
And the better he got, the more passionate he became, right? Like all of us,
Mm.
right? We like to do what we're good at.
Yeah.
And so I worked very hard. And this is another thing for as parents who are in this business know, you have to work very hard to find the right fit, you know, to get your kid to the next level in that
Mhm.
regard. And
For
so,
sure.
yeah, we were lucky. We made those connections early. Zach was in a great place with Emilio.
Mm.
Forgot his Williams, I think,
Mhm.
and in Vallejo, and then he went up from there with, you know, a feeder for the Reds, a feeder for the Emilio, and another guy, I forgot his name, but you know, put him in for the U.S. national team. So if
Mm.
you start to get that recognition and that those ties early,
Yes. Yes. You have always been such a light and such an upbeat, enthusiastic person. Can you share how you choose happiness in your life and what tools you employ?
oh yeah, oh yeah, but in yes, so you know, you had kind of mentioned the pandemic before,
Mhm.
and during the pandemic, you know, I was terrified, right? March, I'll never forget, what was it, March 11th or something, we heard
Yeah.
that, and I remember my kid, he used to take the bus at 6:30 in the morning. It was horrible. I have to drive him to the bus, then he'd ride for like 40 minutes, go to school all day, I have to pick him up at the bus. And he was not a happy camper. I wasn't a happy camper. And we heard about the lockdown, and I was terrified because I can't cook. I can't, I can't clean. And now this kid who hadn't been home, you know, since preschool, right? I have
Right.
to make 3 meals a day for him and grocery shop and clean my house. And oh my God, I was terrified. I got two therapists immediately. I'm like, I need to, you know, be in therapy for sure, which I had put off, right? I had been looking, it didn't work, it didn't work. I'm like, now I need therapy. And
Sure.
during the pandemic, I think it was hard, but for some reason I was able to pursue that. It was definitely necessary.
Mm.
And so I think the lesson in that is that it's kind of like turned out to be the best blessing in the end. And once you kind of settled into it in no time at all, like I had done my, in no time at all, we had settled in. And I think that's what you really have to do. You have to pull that, what's the positive experience on it? And I wasn't alone, the support mechanisms, right? I got myself some therapists.
Yeah.
I did my master's thesis on um, virtually real reality connections, real time, you know, through video and talking, which is what's that? It's Zoom, right?
Yes.
So, yeah. So just like 9 years later, someone had actually implemented my master's thesis, and I was over the moon.
Wow.
I started a little game group with some friends on Zoom. We would meet, I don't remember how many times. And I also joined a little yoga thing on Zoom, and I
Mm.
got two book groups. So I guess all I want to say with this is that, okay, this terrifying event happens. And what do? I mean, you make lemonade. I guess that's the short of it, right? You make
Yeah.
lemonade. And
Yeah.
like, did I want to be home cooking 3 meals a day for my kid and whatever? And, you know, waking him up, making sure he was all this stuff, right? Did I want to do that? I did not. And I had to really switch a little gear in my mind
Mm.
and say, I have to turn everything into a challenge, you
Mhm.
know, and again, back to my mother, you know, with her stories from the Holocaust, everything was an incredible challenge. It wasn't like this horrendously oppressive situation. Everything was a challenge. The way she described it was
Mm.
beautiful. And so in my mind, my mom always brought me up to solve challenges or to be, you know, excited about challenges. And so I thought, wow, you know, I started making lists of the food. And again, I think I mentioned this before you recorded, that I have a bunch of degrees and I got to participate in Zach's classes. He had projects and so on. He was home full time. He had these kids. And so he would always show me. I didn't do the work, but he would show me what he was doing. I would read like his biochem book. It was really fascinating because it just like it developed so much over time. uh,
Wow.
and the field had opened up, and then we were, like I said, we were doing mRNA. He was doing mRNA models, And I had to hold the spirals, you know, and we had to do the replication. I had to videotape the whole thing so you could hand it in. It was very exciting time. And it could have turned out to be much worse, right? Of course, I had a computer in every room. I have tons of broadband. You know, I understand how incredibly fortunate I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not a gratitude person, but people keep telling me that gratitude will make you happy. And
I've heard that. I've heard that.
And so I try to really incorporate that, like, look, be grateful for my broadband.
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
the incredible connection it afforded me with people. And I organized family get-togethers. Like, I haven't seen my European family, right? Extended European family. We did birthdays every month, you know. So you just have to make lemonade, I think. That's, if that's an answer to your question, you make lemonade. And the other thing I haven't mentioned yet is the body, mind, spirit, right? It's really important. You don't isolate yourself in one realm. You know, you really have to stay healthy. If you're unhealthy, it stinks. And so I herniated my disc because I didn't herniate it. My disc herniated during the pandemic. And I was in bed for 6 weeks. And I mean, it's unlike me. I'm very active, as you may know or remember, or whatever. I love to be active. And during the pandemic, I was out there at the Arnold Arboretum with my friends doing walking groups, 6 feet apart, you know.
Yeah.
So we managed to get healthy and exercise and nature and everything together. But man, if you are unhealthy, it's just incredibly difficult. And so you have to keep your body healthy. You have to maintain that.
Yep.
You know, you gotta get the weight bearing exercises, you gotta get the core strength, you gotta do all of that and continue to learn. And then develop your mind, do something for that, reading, you know, games, all that kind of stuff. And then the spirit, I think, was always the hardest part for me. But but the whole meditation that I tried, like, I'm like, oh, it's a pandemic, I should be able to meditate every day. Like, what else am I doing? You know, but meditation is really super. John Cabot-Zinn, right? Wherever you go, there you are. I remember one incredible heartbreak that I was just distraught over, and just reading John Cabot-Zinn's Wherever You Go, There You Are, and really looking at what's her name, Pema Chodrön.
Oh yes, big fan. Yeah.
And just there was a rabbinical kind of series about the Kabbalah and about, you know, that kind of spirituality that helped me. And of course, you know, so other people along the way, like Rachel with her Shabbats, and finding people like that, you know, who are going to thrill you and you're going to love, and your support system.
I love so much about what you said, especially you really had to make that choice of, I'm going to make lemonade out of this, where it would have been so easy just to focus on how hard it was and how much you didn't feel like doing all of this. But that was a shift that you made, and that's where it was a choice. We all were going through the same thing, and we could choose how we were going to handle it. Not that we didn't have our days, but just the overall, I'm making a choice to see the good or to find the silver lining. And the part about keeping our bodies healthy is so, so important, body, mind, and spirit, because, you know, it's the old, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. But it really is true. And I know I've had back problems, and it's kind of like when you are in pain, you can't focus on anything else, and you can't choose anything else. The pain is overwhelming. So I can't agree with that more, that our bodies and our minds have to take priority, no matter what else is going, pandemic or no pandemic. We have to do what we can. Wow. Thank you you're so wise.
Oh, well, I mean, I think it's all in your book anyway, Rachel. So
that's very
back
nice.
at you. But you know, one thing that you also do that's really important that we maybe didn't mention yet is, don't be afraid to ask for help. So many of us say, oh, we're going to look weak, right? I always say that, I'm going to look weak, I can't ask for help.
Yeah.
But look at all the information you get by interviewing people, right?
Yes.
Look at how much, more,
Mhm.
information comes to you. And we stand on the shoulders of giants,
Yes.
and
Yes.
we're not giants ourselves, but we stand
No.
on the shoulders of giants. And it's so important to, to do this and to really put yourself out there.
Yeah. And I'll share, just the other day, because I went through the thing with visiting my friend whose husband passed away. I called a good friend of mine and I said, I'm really having trouble making sense of things. Can you kind of help me? And what he said was, I'm so happy you reached out. Thank you. I'm honored to help you. I was like, what? Because my thought was, he's not going to have time. He's not going to want to. And that just hit me so beautifully. Like, wow, people really do want to support us. We need to give them the opportunity to do so, and think, if someone came to me for help, of course I'd help them. Why do I think I'm a burden? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't get,
Yeah, that was an aha for me when he said. I was like, wow, and thank you for sharing that. So just in closing, because you have accomplished so much, and one could say in a non-traditional female career, not really, but sort of, what encouragement do you have for people who really want to go after something, but they're told no, or they're discouraged, or any of that? Because I feel like you've broken through so many barriers, and you've done things on your own terms, and so magnificently. So how can we be more like you? How can we embody you?
I have one more thing I wanted to say, and I
Please,
want to answer that question, but maybe after I can tell you
please.
something. Should I tell you now or answer that question?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So I just, somehow it didn't come up, and I wanted this to come up because it's really an important moment in American history and in the world history. And I keep thinking of it more and more. So when I came to America, I was very, I found the situation for people of color to be the same as it had been for my family. And the oppressive, the prejudice, the all of the things that are so apparent today that we all know about, and that many people are fighting against to try to suppress, right? Like in Hungary, the quota laws that came in for I guess the Jews, right? Before in the 20s, in the late 20s, the quota laws of you couldn't go to school, you couldn't buy in this area, you couldn't employ Christians, you couldn't own homes, you couldn't, then you were ghettoized, and then that whole issue. So when I came to America, I saw that we lived in a poor neighborhood. We lived in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And I was very attracted to, I felt an identity with people of color. I did not feel an identity with other Jews who were extremely wealthy, who were upper class in America. And it was very odd. Like I did not feel an affinity to the other Jews, even though obviously they supported us, Hias and Joint and the Temple, and JCC camps and so on. I spent a lot of time there. And I'm just mentioning this because it turns out that I married a person of color, right? And a foreigner at that, because I'm attracted to foreigners because I am one. It gives me a lot of resonance. Even though I speak perfect English, I still have a little foreigner at heart. And so I married a foreigner, but my son's dad is Black, and people say a lot of things, but I finally figured out, I was very old by that time, but I figured it out. It was because I had so much affection and identification with the minority group, as having that experience as a Holocaust survivor, child of Holocaust survivors, and the whole oppression even under communism and that thing. So recently so during the pandemic, I got involved with some book groups at my temple, and they're anti-racism book groups that started with Kendi, how to be an anti-racist, Ibrim Kendi. And I just loved his book. His book was just incredibly eye-opening. And we read Heather McGee's The Sum of Us, which was phenomenal. She's a Milton grad, an economist, and had some incredible. And then the last one, and I'm blanking on her name, Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. That finally put everything together for me about this. And I know I'm talking about stuff that you didn't ask about, but this Isabel
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Her book is amazing. Her book is like, okay, you know, I never knew this. And in my mind, this had always been going around and around like, oh, you know, there's so much commonality between the Nazis and the Confederacy, right? And slavery and enslavement. And finally, in Isabel Wilkerson's book, lo and behold, guess where the Nazis got their ideas from?
I don't know.
The Confederacy, the United States of America. Nothing was, you know, racist enough. Australia wasn't racist enough. They got their whole platform. Oh my God, her book just like blew my mind open. I'm like, finally, I get it. And one of the reasons I'm mentioning this is that, you know, people say that, or they make the point that in the 60s, right, the civil rights movement moved us forward in an era for equal rights for women, equal rights for other groups. And right now we're in that position again. You know, it is people of color who are opening this world up for us, for rights for people. And I just got so much satisfaction from learning all of this. It's been a beautiful experience. And it was something like, I have a degree in science, right? A bunch of sciences. I never really, like politics, oy vey.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But this stuff that's happening now in our country about pushing forward on civil rights, voting rights, sticking together and being in that regard is so important. And it really gives me a lot of strength. Gives me a lot of strength and hope. Yeah.
That's wonderful, because some people would say, I want to bury my head in the sand and I don't want to pay attention to it, or it's going to make me upset. But the fact that you can derive strength from it is amazing. Because, you know, I think people are kind of like, oh, I don't want to, you know, but it's like, no, let's embrace it. Let's find strength from it. Let's do it more. Let's get more involved.
Another person who you might know, or maybe you don't know, because she's from Boston, Heather Cox Richardson. She's a historian, and she, during the pandemic, she started a Substack where every day, well, again, since 2016 at the election, she started it because I think she got threatened by the president at that time. So she started a Substack group, and I will forward you her every day. She writes a little something, and she gave us hope. She got her own group. She has like millions of followers now. But she was a historian. She's so knowledgeable in this. And for us, people like me who are so ignorant in this regard, right? I have no idea about politics. And she really gave us so much insight, not just about the moment, but historically, you know, how things happen. And wow. So yeah, again, it's that support. We're going to hit back to that support. The words of encouragement I have is for us is to continue to look for your support mechanisms. If things are not working, they're not your support mechanisms, look elsewhere, okay? Don't abandon it perhaps, but look for your support mechanisms. Find the things that tickle your fancy.
Oh, that's so, so wonderful. And we don't have to settle for things or people that aren't the right support mechanisms for us. Sometimes we get stuck and say, oh, well, I have these people, but they don't support me, or, oh, this isn't really doing it for me anymore. But we don't feel like we can go outside of our comfort zone or go out to reach out to people who might not know as well. And I think that's what we really need to do, and have the courage to do that.
Right. Have the courage to look for your support. Right.
Oh, wow. I just want to drink you in. You are so brilliant.
Me too. Can we make this like a monthly?
Yes, I would love that. Thank you so much for being with us. I learned so much, and I will have those books you recommended at the end so people can check them out. Thank you. And my best to beautiful Zach. I can't wait to see what happens. Thank you. Mwah! Thank you.
So awesome to see you, Rachel, again. It's just like yesterday.
It is. Thank
Amazing.
you. Thank you.
And thanks for doing this. This is such a big help for people
Oh,
like me.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. Take good care. Yay.